Hi, welcome back to Country Basket Weaving. I'm your hostess, Sandy Atkinson. Today we're going to be honoring the month of March with our Shamrock basket. It's a really simple basket to make, takes a little bit of time, but well worth it. It's worked on a wood base. We have a single braid in the back, and we're going to get at this one. The material that you're going to need for this basket is as follows. You're going to need one Shamrock cutout tray base. You're going to need number 4 round, and dye your number 4 round moss green. Cut 103 pieces 18 inches long. You're also going to need number 2 round dyed Kelly green and number 2 round left natural. I painted the base with acrylic paint, so you're going to need paint and a brush, of course. To get started here, I'll show you the base here. It's simply a shamrock base, and it has several holes, 103 to be exact. They are a little tight together, but I wanted that effect so that we could have a nice tight weave around the basket. Make sure you paint the back side also. I think it's important to have both sides looking nice. This is just a little one I had cut out that I was going to use for a coaster for cups to kind of match it, and I could make a set of 6 of these and have my nice shamrock tray. To get started, of course, I painted the base, and I have this one all ready to go. I've inserted my 103 18-inch long pieces. I left about 4.5 inches on the base down here. I've already started the braid because you can imagine it took me a little while to do this whole braid. I've left the last few to show you the first step. This is a simple 2-step braid. Starting anywhere on your basket, take one spoke behind the spoke to the right and down. This needs to be soaked very, very well. Finish the same thing, one spoke to the right. I'm having trouble because I'm trying to show you on the camera, so I'm going to pull it this way, push it down. I have soaked this very well so that these won't break. If yours has a tendency to break, take your needle nose pliers and crimp the reed right next to the base, and that'll help it bend also. When you get to the very last one, which I'm coming on here, take a tool, open up the very first one that you laid down, bring it up gently, and take the last one, and it slides right through there from the outside, or from the inside out, and pull it down tight. Okay, now that's the first step. The second step that you're going to do, again, starting anywhere, lift up the one spoke, pick up the spoke to the right, and slide it gently under that spoke there, and give it a little pull, and just let it rest. Here's my next one. I'm going to pick up the spoke on the right, push it in there. Again, you keep it very, very wet. You're going to have to stop and soak it a little bit in between each one of these steps. One more time. Move it in there. It's a little bit tight in here, so take your time. Use your fingers. Kind of flex your reed a little bit to get it to bend, and slide it right in there. Work the pattern all the way around the base. When you have that done, you can do some trim work on here, or you can wait till you finish the basket to do that trim work. Turn the base over, and I'm going to be ready in a minute to finish, or to start on this next one. I've re-soaked the basket to make sure I keep these spokes very, very wet so they don't break on me. And I finished the base here, and I've done the trim work, and see how nice that looks? Okay, I'm going to set the base on a flat surface. I use 2 strands of the Kelly green. This is the number 2 round that I dyed. And I used 1 strand of the white, or the natural, that I didn't do anything with. I'll get this untangled here. And I've soaked these really good too. Because of the tightness of this basket, they're going to have to make some sharp turns, so keep them wet, keep them soaked. A good way to do that is to keep a sponge by you, or of course a big bucket will work also, and a spray bottle works really well too to keep things sprayed while you work. Taking your 3 strands, this is going to be triple twine. I've got 3 strands, a natural and 2 of the Kelly green. Just place them in 3 consecutive spokes, between 3 there. Can you see where I've done that? I like to reach in here and hold these down with one finger. Take the far one on the left, go over 2, in front of 2 here, 1, 2, and behind the third. Pull that third one out gently. It should be okay if you've got it really wet. And then bring it behind and out. Come and get the next one on the left. Take it in front of 2 again and behind the third. And work it down. Now I'm taking my last one from the left again, in front of 2, behind the third. And I find that if I pull this spoke out in front of 2 and pull that third one out and bring it out gently, that works really well and you won't break it. You really need to, I can't stress enough how important it is to keep these really wet so that you don't break them. And again, I'm always taking that left one in front of 2, behind the third, and out. As you work this pattern around, keep pushing it down so that it's all packed in good and tight. I did 12 rows. If you want a little bit taller tray, then put in 15 rows. There's enough extra length up here to finish that braid, so you could make it a little taller if you like. Here I'm at a tight spot in here. As I work this, my ends are going to tangle, so I have to stop every once in a while and untangle these ends. And come and get the one on the left and go around. In front of 2, behind the third. And this is one of those tight spots. There's about 3 of these on this basket, maybe 4 of them. And I just work them down. As I work the rows around, you're just going to keep working your rows around and around. Keep packing everything down. You may need a tool. Take a screwdriver, a flathead screwdriver or something, your awl will work also, and just pack those rows in tight. I want to get just a little bit farther so that I can show you how to add a new weaver when you run out. Now one more and I'll show you. I'm going to cut one of these off so I can show you how to add a weaver. Untangle your ends. Let's say I ran out of this one here, the white one. I'm going to always end my short length on the left side. Then I'm going to bring this one in. Let me cut it just a little bit shorter. I like to bring this one out, slide my new one in. That's all I do is slide it in. But in this basket, because I don't want all those ends cut, the cut ends showing on the outside, I'm going to take the one that ran out and pull it to the inside. I hope you can see what I'm doing. I've just pulled it to the inside. Then I can do all my trim work inside the basket, and I won't have those ends on the outside. Then just continue the pattern over 2, behind 1, and out. Work the pattern, like I said, 15 rows around the base. The pattern that you're going to get is like this one on the side here. Isn't that pretty, with just a little bit of the natural showing and lots of the Kelly green, and the 2 greens blend really pretty. I'm going to soak this and be ready to do the next set to the top braid in just a moment. I've re-soaked my base here. I have my 12 rows, and like I said, you could do it a little taller. There's enough length on this reed here for our top braid, so you could go probably another 1 to 2 inches taller. I'm going to show you how to do the top braid now. You're going to take your needle nose pliers and come in here and crimp each one of these right next to the top of your weaving, and crimp it all the way around. And a crimp is simply a squeeze with your needle nose pliers so that you break down those fibers and they'll bend easy for you. Okay, I've already done that all the way around. Starting anywhere for this top braid, you're going to take one spoke, behind 2, and out. One spoke, behind two, and out. And as you weave this along, it'll start holding itself down. When you come to those tight spots, just take your time. Make sure you keep this very, very wet. I'd hate to see you break a spoke. But if you do break a spoke, it can be repaired. Again, I'm just taking my time in this section here. And I think what I'll do is, let's say I do break a spoke. Let me show you how to repair it. Let's come over here, and I'm going to purposely cut one off and pretend like I have broken this spoke. So if it breaks up in here, simply cut it off even with the top edge of your weaving. Take a knitting needle or an awl, something sharp, work it down one side, kind of wiggle it in there so that you're opening up that space in there, and insert the broken piece, either the one that broke off if there's enough length left to it, or you have to get a new piece and measure it and fit it back down in there. But that's all you do. Make sure you crimp the new piece so that when you come to it, it'll bend for you. And again, you're going to work this all the way around, behind two and out, putting a little bend on it. When I dye reed, I'd like to give you some dyeing tips and techniques that I use. I really have been getting beautiful, vibrant colors. As you'll see in this series, the colors that I'm getting with this dye is just beautiful. How I do it is, at a garage sale, or if you have to go buy one, I have a long pan about like this long and this wide, and it fits right on 2 burners on my stove, right in my kitchen. And I take that and I put it, I put about 2 gallons, between 1.5 and 2 gallons of water. And I like to use my water that I get from my dehumidifier in my basement, because I think I get better and truer colors with that, because I do not have good water at our house. It has a lot of iron in it. So that's why I use the distilled water. I take the water, add it to my pan, and I add the dye to it that I'm going to use that day. I bring it to a simmer. I try not to boil it. I personally feel that boiling kind of dries out the reed, so I try not to boil it, but I do simmer it, getting it very hot. I soak my bundle of reed that I'm going to dye. After I have it soaked for a couple minutes, I take it apart and divide it into quarters. So I'm only dyeing about 1/4 pound at a time. I put it into the dye pot loosely so that the dye will circulate around all of the reed and you won't have blotches on it. And then I let it soak until, I let it soak until I get the desired color, only darker, because remember, when reed is wet, the color is darker. As it dries, it lightens. So I let it soak in there till it's a little darker than the color I want it, and then I take it out and I put it in cold water and I rinse off any excess dye, and when it runs clear, I put it in another bath of cold water with salt, either a handful of salt or about 1 cup of vinegar. And I'm a dumper, so I'm just guessing at the amount I use. Then I let it soak in there for a few minutes, take it out and let it drain. It's then ready to weave with right then while it's wet, or you can coil it up and let it dry. It's important to let it dry. Reed will mold if you don't let it dry, and you don't want to get any mold or mildew on it. So go ahead and let it dry, and then you can weave with it later. If I'm going to weave with it later, I go ahead and re-soak it, but I also put salt in my re-soaking water, and this helps so that the dyes won't run. When I use the reds, some of the blues, but mostly the reds really seem to run a lot. So I'm real careful about adding extra salt or vinegar to my re-soaking water before I go ahead and weave. I can get approximately 2 pounds out of each box or liquid dye, whichever one you choose to use. I can get about 2 pounds of reed with really good colors. Then the colors start to fade because, of course, you're taking out the dyes. They're getting on the reed is exactly what you want to do. So if you want lighter colors, you can kind of play with the dye pot after that. I don't keep the dye because it just doesn't keep well. So I go ahead and dump it out and would get fresh dye if I was going to dye again. Always dye more reed than what you think you need, because sometimes it's just deceiving. You're going to need more reed and then you're going to be sorry you don't have it. So always dye more. When I'm dyeing, because I weave so much, I usually dye at least 1 pound or 2 of the color I want, perhaps in different sizes of the reed. And then I always have it on hand and I know I'm not going to run out. Now that I have gotten all the way around here while we've been talking about our techniques here, I want to show you how to end this. This is my third from the last. I'm going behind the 2. This is the very first one I started with. Use a tool and lift this gently up so it'll create a little hole that you can stick that in through and bring it forward. Go to the next one over, which is the second one I took down, and this one goes behind the one, and reach around, and it goes into the next one there. I just made a mistake. We need to back up here. Okay. Here's my fourth one. My third one simply comes down here in front of my second one, my very last one. Then I pick up this one, and go behind this one and behind here in that little one, that first one I went down. I went one too many there when I went to end. Then this one will simply come behind here. This hole here is the second spoke that I put down, and it's still empty. That's where this very last spoke goes, and pull that down. Okay, now we've gotten all the way around with our first step in the weaving, and just kind of push them down and make sure there's not any sticking up. Now we're ready for step 2. Again, this is a very simple 2-step braid. Starting anywhere, pick up 1 spoke, pick up 2 spokes to the right, go underneath those 2, and right in the hole, you'll see there's a little hole there. And I kind of push these down inside to keep them out of the way. As you can see, I do have lots of length here, so that it would be easier to make this basket a little bit taller if I desired. Okay, again, I'm going to go under 2 and out, or pardon me, and in. We're going in now. Under 2 and in. And you're going to work this one all the way around. Let me go back to the dyes for just a minute and tell you, when I dye in the summertime, I usually dry my reed outside. But if I'm drying it in the sun, I only dry it in the sun for a few minutes because the sun will fade the colors. So be careful when drying in the summertime outside. Don't let it set, your reed that has been dyed, don't let it set in the sun too long. And then let it finish drying perhaps in the shade. I have a friend that even dries her reed on the clothesline, and that's a real interesting view to see her reed hanging all over her clothesline. I'm going to continue working this pattern under 2, under 2, and then inside. You can work that all the way around. You have enough length here. You actually could do this whole set again. The only problem you might have is down here where it's a little tight. But you could do this whole set again because you have the length there. I want to go back now, and now that you've got the idea, and we'll finish this, and I'll bring out the next set that's finished, and I'll show you how, or almost finished, and then I'll show you how to end this top braid. Now that I have finished, I have re-wet my top again so that I keep everything nice and wet, And I've finished all but the last couple that I want to show you how to end this braid. Again, I'm going under 2 and then into that hole. And the last one here in. 2 more left. Now I will need to use a tool, and I need to come in here and open this area up, go under the one that's left and into that next hole, which is really 2 over. And this last one, there should be 2 spokes with no reed between them, and this is where that last one goes. As you can see, I have enough here, enough length left on this pattern that I could go back and do another braid the very same way, under 2 and out, all the way around. It may be a little bit tight down here, that's why I chose not to do it, but you might want to give that a try. When I have my braid finished and I'm happy with the way the basket is, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to trim these out. And I'm going to take some of these out and leave them a little bit long, and then I'm going to go back and trim. I just want to be able to get in here and see what's going on here. Be careful not to trim too short. If you trim too short, you're going to have these pop out. I'd rather you trim them a little bit longer and then go back and trim them again if you find you have enough room. But go ahead and trim that basket all the way out. If you haven't done the bottom trimming, go ahead and do that. Again, these are just trimmed back also. Do this all the way around. One little note here. I let this base soak because, of course, I'm doing several at a time to show you the procedure for it. Be real careful. I have a little bit of grain raised here on the wood, so just a warning, don't soak your wood base too long. When you finish, you can go in and do all the trim work. There should not be too much trim work on the outside here because remember how we push those ends inside and do the trim work inside here. And again, being careful not to trim too short. And then you have a really nice shamrock base. If you would like any of the die tips that I mentioned today, I have written a die sheet that I'll gladly send to you. If you just want to send me your name and number, address, I'll get one out to you. Next week, we're going to be working on our Easter basket. Of course, April follows March, and we're going to have our Easter basket here. I have dyed up lots of colors. In this one, I actually put 5 colors. The ones we're going to work with next week, I've only used 4. It's a beautiful basket, has a nice twill in it here, a double braid, real similar to the one we did this week. You'll already have experience. We have a nice handle that has all the colors, or some of the colors from the basket added into it. I'm going to look forward to seeing you next week. Get out that die, start dyeing, get a lot of beautiful colors ready for our Easter basket next week. Have a wonderful week and be safe. Thank you.